Yeah. We acknowledge that this land we meet on today is the traditional lands of the Noongar people, and we respect their spiritual relationship with their country. We also acknowledge the Whadjuk people as the custodians of the greater Walilup area, and that their cultural and heritage beliefs are still important to living Whadjuk people today. Our first item of business tonight is the presentation of the annual report. The Director of City Business is going to give a short verbal presentation on the annual report and financial statements, and then we'll move a motion to accept the annual report. So over to Matt Hammond, Director of City Business.
Just a very short summary of the annual financial statements being presented tonight. So obviously coming off the back of early 2020 was a difficult time with COVID-19. And then moving into the 21 financial year, we delivered a net operating result of $10.7 million. That comprised of $79.4 million in operating revenue and $75.4 million operating expenditure. We also delivered a capital expenditure of $26 million and carried forward a surplus of $15.06 million into the 21-22 financial year.
Thank you, Mr. Hammond. So I will move that the City of Fremantle Annual Report 2020 to 2021, including financial statements and Auditor's Report, as attached to this agenda, be received. Do I have a seconder for that? We will come to question time. Sorry, I'll give you a look ahead that the question time is after this. So Jenny Archibald had her hand up to second that. So we'll vote on the motion. As this is my first AGM, I will check with the CEO. So we can allow questions before we put it to the vote. So Mr. Ross, I think it is, up the back. So you'll need to come up and ask your question at the microphone. So the meeting's being recorded. And then I think Mr. Dowson, you wanted to ask a question as well.
So my name is Craig Ross. I live in Little High Street. My question is, are you receiving the extract of the financial statements, or you're actually receiving the full 60-odd pages of financial statements? Because in the agenda, you only have an extract.
I'll throw that one to the Director of City Business.
It's the annual report and financial statements.
Mr. Dowson, did you want to ask a question at the microphone?
Thank you, Mayor. My question follows on from the previous one, and it's a similar question to the fact that this meeting, which was only advertised 3 days ago on the internet, doesn't contain the full financial document. So I don't understand how we as a meeting can pass a document if we don't have it. It's outside. There's some copies outside now for us to pick up now, but this was not on the internet. It has not been made available. It was not part of the agenda. There was a 5-page summary, so I don't see how this meeting is in a position to pass something that they haven't had until they walked in the door.
I'll throw that one to the CEO.
So the annual report has been provided with an abridged version of the annual financial statements. The annual financial statements were provided by Council through the August round of Council meeting and the Audit Committee. If the group don't feel they're of an opinion where they can vote for it, then I would say don't vote for it.
All right. Maria Vusic, did you want to ask a question on the microphone?
This is just a clarification. Either we meet local government standards on this point or we don't. Thank you.
I'll take that as a question. Do we meet local government standards?
I believe the local government standards have been met, yes.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to put this to a vote. All those in favour, raise your hand. And those against. Do you want to count it or not? Some people aren't voting. All right. We're going to have to count the for and against. So all those in favour, if you could raise your hand and leave them raised. Cool. And those against. So that one's lost. All right, that's going to bring us on to public question time. So we have received some questions in writing beforehand. There's, I think, 16 odd questions from Craig Ross. So we will take those ones on notice, Mr. Ross. But if you do wish to ask any sort of, I guess, abbreviated questions in this meeting, I'd invite you to do so. We also have a question from Shirley Burbidge. So I might go to Shirley's question. If you want to ask that at the microphone, Shirley, and you've got 3 minutes, and then I'll go to you, Mr. Ross.
Shirley Burbidge, Ashburton Terrace, Fremantle. I'm directing my question, I think, to Mr. Tattersall, because I'm asking you, why has the council gone over to those green dog waste bags that are absolutely useless when the yellow ones were sufficient and they kept the waste before you could get to until you could get to the bin? So have we received a special deal from the people who make the green ones, or are the yellow ones too expensive?
Thanks. I'll ask the Director of Infrastructure to answer that one.
Thank you, through the Chair. We've tried to move towards biodegradable bags. We have been trialling different types of bags, and there are also some pretty significant supply issues with bags as well. So we've been trialling different versions. We receive feedback on each one, and I'll take that on board and feed it back to the parks team. Thank you.
Okay. Now, the other thing I want to direct to you is a bouquet. I want to thank whoever was responsible for planting the everlastings. They've given me great joy last year as I drove down South Street, and this year when I come down Ray Avenue. So a big thank you to whoever was responsible. You've done a very good thing for Fremantle. Thank you.
I'll second you on that one, Shirley. I love them. Mr. Ross, did you want to ask any key questions maybe from your document?
Is it correct I've only got 3 minutes?
Yeah.
Are you sure? Can I get confirmation?
That's never how any meeting has ever been run for an annual general electors meeting that I've ever been to in the city of Fremantle. There's never been a 3-minute time.
It's up to the presiding officer. Thanks, Mr. Woodcock. Thank you.
And it doesn't run like
so it's 3 minutes for a question. Thanks. So because your extensive list of questions will be responded to, but in writing, because it was quite a significant list.
So
Councillor Thompson. Well, it's how we apply the 3 minutes in council meetings. So I wouldn't have thought it was a surprise, but I'm happy to confer with the CEO and have a conversation about how we want to go forward. Yeah, so, I mean, if you've read the Act, it is obvious that the presiding member does make the decision, and this is my first one. I'm comfortable with 3 minutes per question. If you do want to work through your 16 questions, that is fine. But they will be taken. I've asked staff what they want to do, and they will take them on notice. So it's up to you. I mean, it's really just whether you want to own the floor for that long.
I have 3 minutes to ask 16 questions.
A question.
All right. Okay. Yeah. Oh, per question. All right. Okay. Okay. But as I understand, you'll take everything on notice and you'll have no reply to my questions. Is that correct?
The ones that you've submitted in writing today, we haven't got answers for them today. So, as we often do in council meetings, we take them on notice and provide full written answers.
All right. I'll just read out very briefly the concerns, the financial reporting and the financial management concerns that I have, very similar to last year, which was also unsatisfactory, the answers that were given to the questions as well. But here we go. First one is actually about the incomplete financial report in the agenda attachment. We were just having a discussion for the meeting approval. I think it's poor transparency not to include the full financial statements in the agenda. And I'm not sure why you can't give an answer now, why you can't follow that transparency principle. You're not going to respond to any question?
Well, I think what we've said is that we're going to take these questions in total on notice.
Okay. All right. Second question is the net decrease in cash. This is cash inflows and outflow in 10 million. So my question was, how will the council be financially sustainable and balance its cash term deposit inflows and outflows with the ongoing continual disposal of assets from the investment property portfolio, such as Corey Street, to fund these unsustainable cash inflow shortfalls? Question 3, provision for rehabilitation of landfills and contaminated sites. Has the council, for FY21 financial report purposes, undertaken a review on the rehabilitation of landfills and other contaminated sites? So we're talking about South Road Frio, land site, Phil, Jones Street, and other sites. 4, FY21 non-compliant disclosure for uncollectible receivables provision movement. Question 5, the major land transaction outflow of 3 million is incorrect. 6, why was the FY21 financial statements late? So the question is, what are the main reasons from the council side for the delay in finalising the FY21 audited financial report? 7, City of Fremantle delinquent in submission of draft financial reports to the Auditor General. So I jumped on the Auditor General's website and it has the delinquency of the councils who submit their draft financial statements late. So 7 submitted late out of 130, and City of Fremantle sits there not meeting the 30 September deadline or the amended deadline for the draft financial statements. So just a quick question. Did you meet the FY22 deadline last week?
Do you want to continue with the rest of them, and then we'll
I
go
don't
to
think you
any
need that
questions
on
at the
notice,
end?
do you?
No, I'm happy to take that, but I'm going to let you keep speaking and then go to any responses afterwards. So if you want to keep going, we'll note that one down because I don't think it's in your list.
Question 8 then. Lack of transparency for all internal control weaknesses from the FY21 audit process. I'm not sure why the council can't be transparent with its interim and final audit visit internal control weaknesses that are identified. Question 9. FY21 audit report contains 5 material non-compliance matters. The audit report indicates 5 material non-compliance matters which are a significant risk if not addressed promptly. These being 1, lack of value for money for the Civic Centre architectural contract. 2, unauthorised expenditure. 3, inappropriate payroll controls. 4, inappropriate journal entry controls. And 5, significant weaknesses in IT computer controls. How is the city ensuring there are sufficient resources to address the significant weaknesses identified that appear to be happening year after year? For the city staff and CEO responsible for the internal control weaknesses identified year after year, are these failings addressed in their staff performance appraisals? Question 10. Civic Centre project costs not transparent at 30 June 2021. The non-compliance with capital work in progress disclosure in FY20, as required by accounting standards. If you were at last year's electors meeting, I pointed out that was incorrect disclosure, and I'm really happy that the Auditor General picked it up. I was so unhappy with the response from Councillor Sullivan at that point that I contacted the Auditor General to make a complaint about that disclosure. So it's good to see they picked that up. So we have a lengthy delay in finalising these FY21 financial statements that we're looking at today. There is secrecy over the total project costs. Oh, sorry, I've jumped around. On the we have the lengthy delay in finalising these FY21 financial statements, plus the secrecy over the total project costs that hides the true cost to the ratepayers of the total civic centre project and caused confusion. The council made excuses during FY21 that the total project costs will not be made available until the FY21 audit was finalised. The city has only provided incomplete information for the building construction costs when asked. This deliberate action to only report to ratepayers the building construction costs rather than the total project costs has allowed project costs not to be appropriately scrutinised. In August 2022, a summary was finally and reluctantly provided by the city on the total project costs. This revealed a huge budget overrun. Included in the budget overrun was the overrun on architect costs. So my questions are, what are the reasons the architect costs of 6.9 million exceeded 2.4 million over the revised 2019 figure and 5.1 million over the clearly incorrect original business plan figure? Why was the architect contract structured by the council in a less than proper commercial arrangement so the architect be paid such high additional amounts for delays in the project commencement and time delays? Why was only 1.8 million included as architect costs in the original business plan? Why should ratepayers accept a lack of business acumen, poor budgeting and poor contractual control practices by the city? 11. Inconsistency with Feb 2020 civic cent cost information. Why is the information provided to the council to ratepayers in February 2020 so inconsistent with the actual civic centre project cost information provided in August 2022? 12. Architectural costs not properly disclosed in civic centre costs. During FY21, at the prior year's electors meeting, the council only provided information on the building construction costs and refused to provide total project costs. Why were the architect costs not disclosed properly during FY21 when asked by ratepayers or disclosed in project updates? The payment amounts totaling 6.9 million paid to the architect do not appear on the monthly project council agenda payment listings. So the question is, what and how was the payment or grant or contra-payment mechanism by the city for architect costs? And why are the complete payments for architect costs not included in the monthly payment listings? 13. Recipients of the 3.7 million pinned-down insurance bond. Which contractors or suppliers were paid from the pinned-down insurance bond amounts of 3.7 mil claimed by the council? 14. The Civic Centre Business Plan. The original Civic Centre business plan was financially flawed, incorrect rate of return, and under unrealistic assumptions, unrealistic architect costs, Girona project management fees omitted, fit-out costs omitted, demolition costs out by 1.5 mil, and completely unrealistic forecast rental income on commercial space to repay the $20 million that was borrowed. Given the inaccuracies in the business plan and secrecy in the revised 2019 figures, how will the quality of council business plan be improved in the future and the culture to suppress any unfavourable information be improved? It appears that the full details of the Civic Centre project figures were revised under confidential budget items and assumptions in 2019. Why were these project budgets kept confidential, and why was the secrecy due to the unfavourable information on the budget increases for architect costs and other project costs? 15. Heritage land and heritage buildings. I asked this question last electors meeting. I was basically fobbed off. So I'm asking you again, why shouldn't heritage land and heritage buildings be disclosed separately and transparently in Note 9A in the FY21 financial statements? 16. The CEO signed the FY21 financial report before the audit closing meeting. The FY21 audit closing meeting with council staff and councillors and the Auditor General staff was held on 5 August 2022. However, the CEO signed the financial report prior to that audit exit meeting. Very odd. So the question is, the audit closing meeting would appear just to be a tick-the-box exercise by the audit committee members just to fill their scrutiny role obligations, and would it not be better practice the CEO waits to sign the FY21 financial report until after the audit closing meeting, just in case there's any issues in the financial statements that need amending? That
Thanks,
comes
Mr.
to the end
Ross.
of my 16 questions with sub-questions. I think it's really poor that you're not able to provide a response. This is a question time that electors are able to question councillors, and you're running away from your obligations.
Thanks, Mr. Ross. There was a question that wasn't captured as part of your document, and thank you for all the additional information you put in here about the full year 22 progress. So would you like us to note that down, or you asked about the progress for full year 21-22? So how are we going currently with the Auditor General? So in your, you kind of diverted and you said you had a question about how are we going with this year's annual report, and I wondered if you wanted an answer to that.
Yes, I did, yeah. Yes. So it's FY22 financial statements were due last week. The draft submission to the Auditor General. It's a yes or no question.
So we'll, I don't know if we're in a position to respond to that. Yes.
Do you have a finance manager here at the moment? They would know.
So the Director of City Business is responsible for that. So senior officers respond.
But given it's a statutory duty, wouldn't you be aware of that responsibility?
So I'm throwing to the Director of City Business.
Can I answer? Yep. The audit's currently underway and we're adhering to the dates that have been provided us to the auditors appointed by the Office of the Auditor General.
No, the question is, were the draft financial statements from the city submitted to the Auditor General?
Yes, they have all the information they require to commence the audit.
So the Auditor General's representative has given us dates, and what I'm hearing is that
you know the statutory requirement is 30 September, right? Was it submitted? Were the draft financial statements submitted? It's a yes or no. Not to a representative of a. Was it submitted or not?
The Office of the Auditor General have appointed auditors to work with us.
That means no, by the sounds of it, you haven't met that statutory obligation.
Provided them with all the information that they require.
All right, take that as a no then.
Okay, so we will take all those detailed questions on notice, and they will be responded to through the minutes. Were there any other questions?
I actually missed the page, didn't I?
No, I don't think so. I was playing along with my copy, and I was ticking them as you went.
All right. So all the questions, as I've written, will be submitted in the minutes of this meeting, and you'll have a proper, thorough, not a fobbing off, a decent and thorough response to the questions, unlike the prior year.
That's certainly my expectation, Mr. Ross.
Thank you.
Questions? Yep, that's great. Just state your name, if you can, at the outset.
Bill Odie, I'm a ratepayer. A small point, really. On the agenda, we're rather fortunate to actually have the auditor's report. Now, the booklet that you so kindly provided with the complete accounts, including the notes, is it deliberate or inadvertent that you didn't include the auditor's report in this?
It sounds like it might be inadvertent, but I will check.
And does at some point, are you going to put this on the website? Because it isn't available fully on the website, only the abridged version.
Yeah, so I think there's a couple of things. So the auditor's report is on the website, if I'm correct. No. And I think the annual financial statements were included in an agenda in the August council.
This isn't on the website. The little brief abridged version with the 4 front pages is on the website.
Yeah.
My understanding is the full set of financial statements is on the website.
Which one?
The one we're referring to tonight.
Which one is that?
The full set of financial statements is on the website.
It's not on the Fremantle Council website.
Sounds like there might have been a bit of an issue with attaching it for tonight, and I fully take that on board. And for future AGMs, I will be very aware of that.
Was it deliberate or inadvertent?
Certainly.
Will this full set appear on the council website, including the auditor's report?
So if I'm not
I'm
wrong,
getting nods that the full set of financial statements is on our website and was absolutely attached as part of the August round of council agendas and minutes.
That's what I'm saying.
Hang on, but if I look on the Fremantle Council published accounts, this full set isn't on there.
So it was part of the August agenda for council, but I appreciate that's probably not transparent enough.
I'm an ordinary ratepayer. I'm not a council member. I don't look on council agendas. I look on your site for issued accounts.
Yeah, no, fair enough. I wouldn't expect you to troll around in agendas, and I will note that for next year's AGM that we need to provide a direct link. So thank you.
And you need to ensure that when you talk of your website, you're not talking of your internal council website, but the one that ratepayers such as myself will access.
They are on the external one, but as part of a council agenda, and I appreciate that's not transparent enough, and I hear you. Okay. Okie doke. Questions? We have notice of a number of motions. I'm just foreshadowing that I've got notice of 4 motions here. So I will keep moving to those if there are no further questions from the public. Yep, Mr. Dowson.
Would you like a copy now or after the question? The question, I haven't given you a copy.
If you could hand them up after, that'd be great.
All right, thank you. Madam Mayor, the question concerns the budget for heritage. And in recent years, we've noticed that council has reduced the allocation for heritage in so many areas and has become to a point of an absolute crisis where heritage funding has been sliced and sliced and sliced. And we've gone through all the things that have been cut, and I won't go through them all again. But we were hoping that there would be some move towards reinstating some of the things that you've cut out of the budget for heritage, but that doesn't seem to be happening. This year's budget, the major item related to heritage is actually a very damaging project. It is the intended re-roofing of the Fremantle Arts Centre in sheets of bright tin. Now, this is something the Fremantle Society and all Fremantle experts, I'm talking about the people who work at the Arts Centre, who have worked at the Arts Centre, who know the Arts Centre, the architects around town, all the people we consult with, all the experts said you should not be taking off the current roof and replacing it with bright sheets of tin. But council actually did that, started down one end and then stopped. And we thought that there may be a change of heart because that building needs looking after, and it hasn't been very well looked after. There was a robbery there where all the, for example, the guttering and the downpipes were stolen because they were copper. And instead of using the insurance money to replace them with copper, you replace them with plastic. And that's totally unacceptable. It would be unacceptable for a resident to do that on a heritage listed building, and it's unacceptable for council to take those sort of measures. And now with the roofing, you are going to replace the whole roof with $700,000 worth of sheets of tin, which is totally inappropriate for that building, given the fact that it used to be shingles. And if you can't afford real shingles, which are available, then you use what Rob Campbell used in 1972, and that is faux shingles. So my question is, why is the only major item in your heritage budget this year a very damaging one?
So if you could hand that up as a question, that would be appreciated. I'm not sure if we can answer that on the spot. Looking around for some officer advice. Anyone got something? We'll take that one on notice, but thanks for bringing it to our attention. And also, Mr. Ross, for your question about the heritage, I think is quite interesting. Okay, questions? Further questions? Mark Woodcock. Yep. Yep.
Good evening. My name is Mark Woodcock. I'm a resident in White Gum Valley. I'd just like to point to to everyone in the annual general report 2021 on page 4. It opens up with a Fremantle's profile. So Fremantle's unique character is captured by landscape and heritage architecture. You go down below, it says in the heading, our proud history. Fremantle's most important assets are heritage. Yet the city does so little to protect heritage. It passes policies which allows heritage to be destroyed. Things like the bridge, you can talk about the Spicer site. We can go all around Fremantle and find where heritage is being degraded, which is really one of Fremantle, apart from the people, heritage is the most unique asset that Fremantle has. And if we don't protect that, the future generations won't have anything for it. And no one's coming to see a few concrete towers in Fremantle. You can go to Perth, they're empty everywhere. So if you state heritage is important, then at least act on it. Otherwise, don't put the lies in the magazine. Don't print the magazine at all. We'll save some money.
Thank you, Mr. Woodcock. Anyone else? Okay. Well, that's going to close questions and statements from the public. We've got 4 motions listed here, and I'll just let you know who they're from so that you know that your motion is, I guess, up there. We've got one from Ian Kerr, one from Peter Packach, I hope I'm saying that correctly, one from Mark Woodcock, and one from John Dowson. So that's what the motions that I've got submitted to me up here at this point in time. So we'll work through them in that order. So we'll need, obviously the mover is the person who submitted it. They'll need a seconder. We'll need to get the name of the seconder as well. And then you'll be able to speak on the motion. So Ian Kerr, did you want to move your motion and get a seconder?
Thank you, Matt. Do you need me to read out the motion now? Or I understood from the agenda that you were going to read out the motions submitted beforehand.
I can certainly do that, and I think we've also got it.
And I have circulated written copies in the
and
audience.
It's up on the screen as well. So I'm happy to read it out if your eyesight is as bad as mine. You'd like me to? Yep. No, don't read it out. Is everyone happy to just read it on the screen? If you can't read it, I fully understand because I've got terrible eyesight, and I'm really happy, or Ian would be happy to read it out, I'm sure.
There are hard copies on the chairs in the audience.
Yep. Someone would like it read out? Yep. So go for it. I'm happy for you to read it out. It's your motion.
Thank you. As long as it doesn't interrupt my speaking time.
No, just you haven't got a seconder yet, so it's all good.
The motion is in 2 main parts. The motion is that this meeting, A, does not support the proposal for replacement of the Fremantle Traffic Bridge announced by the WA Minister for Transport on 21st of August 2022, on the grounds that 1, it is inconsistent with A, the clearly expressed views of the community in the consultation held between August 2020 and August 2021, and B, the proposal confirmed by the WA Minister for Transport on 2nd of August 2021, and 2, it does not allow any meaningful or functional retention of any part of the existing heritage bridge. The second part is to call upon the Fremantle City Council, 1, to request cessation of activities associated with realignment of Canning Highway, including pegging and surveying within the existing Parks and Recreation Reserve, and any application to rezone any part of that reserve, and 2, to engage with the WA Government, Main Roads and the Bridge Alliance, and the Fremantle community to undertake an objective and transparent comparative assessment of the August 2021 and August 2022 proposals. So I so move.
So seconder for Ian's motion. I think Maria Vusic probably had her hand up first. It's a bit of a race, isn't it? So as the mover, you can now speak to the motion Yeah. And then I'll go to other speakers.
Okay. Can I speak to it? Thank you. It is supremely ironic that the first item on tonight's agenda was the much delayed 2020-21 annual report. It's ironic because on page 4, at the start of the About Us section, the report has a banner picture of the much-loved Fremantle traffic bridge. It's ironic also because 2/3 of the last page, with all the important contact details for the city of Fremantle, is taken up by a picture of the newer but equally identified with Fremantle containbow. It's incredibly ironic because both of these Fremantle landmarks will be swept away under the current proposal for realigning Canning Highway down to the river foreshore as part of the Swan River Crossing project. It's more than ironic in my view, it is shameful that this latest version arose from a suggestion made by a Fremantle councillor that Canning Highway traffic should be separated from Queen Victoria Street traffic for entry into the centre of Fremantle, something that was never part of the agreement reached as a result of community action in August 2021 and confirmed at that same time by the Minister for Transport, who breathlessly announced the current abomination just 12 months later. It's shameful that when the engineers perverted this suggestion into the abomination of 14,000 vehicles a day on the river foreshore, there was no Fremantle Council pushback to say this was unacceptable. It is shameful that the Fremantle community and apparently many elected councillors were allowed to be blindsided by the announcement, supported by the Mayor, of a complete redevelopment of the Southern River foreshore, adding to the cost, duration and disruption of the project. It's shameful that Council has been put in the position of being seen to be complicit in driving a swathe of bitumen and concrete through a particularly beautiful area of bushland running down to Beach Street. The purpose of this motion is to put Council on notice that we are fed up with being taken for granted. This motion gives Council a chance to redeem itself when it considers the current proposal as the Finance, Policy, Operations and Legislation Committee on the 12th of October and at full Council on the 26th of October. It also gives Council a chance to redeem itself by calling for that cessation of activities associated with the realignment in the Parks and Recreation Reserve, by opposing any attempts to rezone the Parks and Recreation Reserve to Road Reserve, and engaging with the Fremantle community for an objective and transparent comparative assessment of the previously agreed and current proposals. Now, we can't, of course, know what Council will do over the next few weeks. That is why we are also getting signatures to call for a special electors meeting to be held in early November. And if you haven't already signed the petition and wish to do so, we have forms here tonight and you can come and see me after the meeting. You must, of course, be a Fremantle elector to sign. I urge you to support this motion, not only for the sake of avoiding the devastation that the current proposal would cause, but also to say very clearly to Council that we expect to be more effectively represented and consulted in future. Thank you.
Thank you, Ian. The seconder was Maria Vusic. Did you wish to speak at the microphone?
I'd just like to reaffirm what Ian Kerr has outlined. I must say, when it was brought to the our informal meeting, I was absolutely speechless when I saw the amount of devastation, the amount of concrete, the scale of the operation, and it's just disproportionate to what the community would expect. And I do expect that the council ought to take up representation on behalf of ratepayers, but I'm not seeing a lot of it. So for me, unacceptable, certainly out of proportion to what the community expect. And if we are a carbon neutral council, I just would challenge anybody's imagination to see how much concrete is going to land on us in the next 12 months. Thank you.
Thank you. Others who wish to speak on the motion?
Hello, my name's Lisa Barnes, and I'm a resident of South Terrace in South Fremantle. Recently, we had found out about this proposal to put Canning Highway on the river, and we're absolutely appalled at the proposal. I don't have any notes written down, sorry, so this is all just off the cuff. We've set up a group called Save Our Shore Fremantle to protest against this move, and it's only been going for a couple of weeks. We've already got a lot of support, including, I might add, by people who are very close to the council and very supportive of the council, including myself. Look, this really is not a good solution for Fremantle. There is a lot of opposition. There is issues potentially that we've been talking to the community about. Cantonment Hill is a sacred site, and the river is a sacred site, but apparently Cantonment Hill stops at Canning Highway. There are cliffs, limestone cliffs there, which we have heard were a quarry, where when we look back through heritage documents, we can't actually find any proof that that was a quarry. So, it's very well, I guess we have a lot of we have a lot of reservations about whether that area might in fact be have heritage value. This is the only river foreshore in Fremantle on the southern banks of the river, and I think to put concrete and asphalt over it is really not fair. The other thing is as well is that we're taking 6 lanes of traffic and effectively funneling into 2. So there'll be 4 lanes of Canning Highway and 2 lanes of Beach Street, which will effectively be funneled into 2 lanes of Canning Highway. And we just don't actually see how that's going to be beneficial for the area and beneficial for Fremantle. It certainly stops a lot of traffic from our neighbouring suburbs, East Fremantle, Bicton and the like, from having free transit into Fremantle, and just takes away from the amenity of our foreshore. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Do we have further speakers on the motion?
Trish Bevan, I live at North Bank, and obviously is this of great concern to me. We heard recently that this whole project is going to take 4 years. Do they really believe that we can use one bridge for 4 years to get all the trucks from the harbour as well as the whole of Perth, no other bridge south of the Narrows, to move everybody? Why, if they are talking and planning to move the harbour to Kwinana, don't they move the trucks down there first before they even consider that we have to share that one bridge?
Thanks, Trish. It might be worth directing those questions to us, because I do believe the bridge remains open during the construction period, and trucks are not currently supposed to be using that bridge anyway. So hopefully it's not as bad as you worry. Sorry, Gina, did you want to speak on that motion? Was that what I was saying? Yeah. Well, let's just make sure no one else wants to speak. I'm seeing movement behind you, and I just want to make sure no one else wants to speak before you close. Yeah, sorry. Thanks, Ian. After.
Gina Blakemore, Commercial Street, South Fremantle. I have a huge problem with 17,000 cars being diverted down along the foreshore of a very, very beautiful area of Fremantle. If we cement that area, we are losing that area for our future generations. It's our last foreshore in Fremantle. It's the last place where we can go down and walk. The rest of the Fremantle waterways are harbour. So also another thing of significance is the capstan. Apparently, it's going under where the roadway is going as well. That is the first place that settlers in Fremantle put a rope across the river to pull the barges either by person or horses. The trees are all marked right along up on the top near the container boat and along the front. There's some very old trees there that are going to be removed for this development. Also, businesses. How will this affect the businesses who are on Beach Street? They seem worried at the cafe and the jetty. Will this look like the roundabout that was developed on High Street and Stirling Highway? We're very worried after seeing that development, and this is a main roads project. Will we end up with sound walls because there's sound problems? From what we've seen, it's not very clear. The bridge design also is very, very bland. It looks like what we've got in Perth. I think Fremantle deserves a much more exciting bridge design than what's been proposed. And really, instead of disrupting Fremantle for 4 years, I'd really love to see the new bridge built a bit further west so that we can still use the old traffic bridge and Stirling Bridge and not have to disrupt our traffic. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Yep.
The one thing about this new latest road and bridge plan is that, barring an extremely minor amount of virtually hidden pop-up booths, of the options presented at all the meetings I've been to, and they go back well over 2 years, this was never on any option. This is just plonked on us by Main Roads. Did council have any inkling? This is an actual question. Did council have any prior information or knowledge that this route was going to be put on to or run as the route, barring all previous other routes? Did you know?
So the agenda paper for FPOL this month will go through the full. Sorry, you're struggling to hear me. I'll pull it up a bit. The agenda paper for FPOL this month will go through the full engagement process, finance, policy, operations and legislation. So as Ian referred to in the moving of the motion, this is coming to council for opposition in this month. So it's going to go to a committee and then to full council. And it will go through. And yes, the answer to your question is yes, but I want you to have the detailed.
You did know.
We had a number of briefings to elected members, and I think one of them's referred to one tonight, about the options leading up to it. It's not our project, so we obviously weren't at liberty. Those briefings are confidential. What we are doing in the agenda report is we're going through what options were considered by us in that process to increase transparency. So that's where it's at the moment. I'm probably giving you something away that's not released for another little while, but we want to be transparent about what we've seen and why we've come to conclusions, and we will take a position through that committee and council process. Okay, I'm going to go to Ian to close now. Thanks, John. Okay.
Thank you. Look, first of all, I'd like to thank Ian Kerr for the work he's done on this issue. He's shown great expertise, especially in terms of the traffic issues, and I'm very pleased, the Fremantle Society is very pleased to support what Ian has put forward here. We have a motion that sort of follows on from this a bit later on, but we'd like to thank Ian very much for this. A couple of points were raised. About the heritage of this escarpment that's being wiped out. And I would be interested to know if the Sea and Land Council have been consulted about this. I'd be interested to know if Cantonment Hill and the river are both Aboriginal heritage sites. Surely the bit of land that joins them together, that's the escarpment, surely you would think that that's relevant to the heritage of those two other sites as well. So from an Aboriginal perspective, I'd like to know more about what Main Roads has actually done in terms of consulting with the relevant people on this. Because 15 years ago, when they consulted the Noongar community on the bridge, the advice from the Noongar community was, hey, let's keep the bridge. Yeah, it looks good. If the people want to keep it, let's keep it. That was 15 years ago. Now they've paid another group that come up and say, well, you know, we don't want the bridge because there's too many sticks in the water. So the advice has changed. But my point is that this escarpment is the new elephant in the room. And it's incredibly important, I think, as the only interface that Fremantle Council has with the river, except on the north side. But on the south side of the river, this is the only little bit of land that Fremantle Council's got on the river. And putting a bloody highway through it is just an absolute outrage. The escarpment has a lot of colonial history. If you look at the old photographs, thousands of people used to go down there. 1870s, 1880s, 1890s. There were thousands of people down there watching yachting on the river, watching rowing on the river, and so on. So it's always been a very important part of Fremantle. That escarpment, I think, has a great deal of value. I might point out that it's interesting, Fremantle Council is going to look at some of these things. But, you know, East Fremantle Council told me that they were presented with this Canning Highway suggestion, and they were all very, very strongly against it. So I'd like to think if East Fremantle Council is strongly against it, that this council would also have a similar view. The basic point is there's no rush for this $280 million project because it's not actually solving any traffic problems. The traffic numbers on the bridge are going down. There's no urgency to do this, and I really think Fremantle Council has got to be the leader here and get this right. Thank you.
Thank you. Looking around, Ian, I think it's back to you to close, if you want to close on the debate.
Thank you. I will be brief. There are, as we've had tonight, but on other occasions, many points of view on the Swan River crossings issue. And each of us will have some we regard as more important than others. It would be impossible to agree with all of them, and I think we have to recognise that. But what we can, I hope, agree on is that the process so far has not delivered an acceptable outcome. This motion aims to get back to where there was a reasonable consensus of how to proceed with the project and what items needed to be further investigated. And that consensus did not in anybody's wildest nightmares lead to where we are now. I urge you all here to support this motion, and in doing so, I note that by October 2025, the full devastation of the southern foreshore will be there for all to see. And coincidentally, for the council election in October 2025, the whole council will be up for re-election as a result of the reduction in the number of councillors and consequent changes to wards in the new Local Government Act. Thank you.
Thank you, Ian. So we'll put that one to a vote. All those in favour of the motion. And I think we can say that that's carried based on those numbers. Peter Pakach, you had a motion that you submitted. Please correct me on your name because I feel like I'm getting it wrong.
No, Peter Pakak, it's okay. I've got this motion concerning City of Fremantle containers for change refund point. But if you could please read that, I've got wrong glasses, so it's a struggle for me.
I certainly can. Let me just find my hard copy version that's close to my face because I too find it a little bit hard to read up there. So just give me a minute. Here we are. So you want to move that council conduct a benefit cost analysis to confirm the overall cost to ratepayers of the container for change refund point and what, if any, revenue/profit is generated by the city to cover these costs since its inception in 2020. Also to investigate what other WA Metro councils are administering this scheme as Fremantle does. 2, if shown to be cost prohibitive and a burden on ratepayers, to investigate the supply agreement with WA Return Recycle Renew Limited, Worrell, and resolve to winding down the City of Fremantle involvement in this scheme, the approximately $300,000 to run it, and any city assets utilised by the 2023-24 fiscal year. That the program be offered to a local charity or a commercial enterprise like what other WA councils have done. For example, in Wangara, this is done by Scouts WA Recycling, or in Myaree by Tomra. 4, authorises the CEO to immediately implement this resolution.
Yes, thank you.
So you may now get a seconder for that if you have a seconder. So Mark Woodcock to second that.
Okay.
Back to you.
Okay, so.
Sorry.
Yeah,
now you can speak to why you think
okay,
that's the thing.
Good. My concern is that this scheme is basically which is running usually by either like private enterprise or say scouts or non-profit or like charities is run by the council as far as I know, and it is not clear to me if the council is basically subsidizing this or if this is a profitable venture. So can anybody answer that now?
I suspect it might be a question that requires a slightly more detailed answer, but I'll look to the director to see if he has one off the cuff.
Probably better that we provide details in a written response, but we acknowledge initially it had a slow start. All the containers for change facilities had a slow start. We have not done it the same as a lot of the other Tomra ones. We haven't invested heavily in machinery. Ours is a manual facility that complements the recycling centre adjacent to it, so it's run as a dual operation. But I would suggest that certainly this last financial year, it's certainly washed its face.
Sorry, say again?
I would certainly suggest that this year it's in the black. It hasn't cost us money.
Okay.
Right.
Okay, so that'd be a formal response to that.
Yeah, so all of the motions that are passed tonight then get a response through the council process. But if you want to speak to it further, you can now, or otherwise other people can speak to it as well.
No, I'm fine. I think I stated what I needed to say, so thank you.
Thank you. Did we have any other speakers on this motion? Nope. Mr. Woodcock, you didn't want to add to that? Okay, so we'll put that motion to a vote. All those in favour? And against? Right, so that's carried. And the next motion comes from Mark Woodcock.
Good evening. Just a quick housekeeping point. I think the sign for Paul should be changed. He's not here anymore. It's the wrong name sign.
We know. They take a while to deliver new ones. So, in fact, this is Russell Kingdom. He's sitting in the chair tonight. I think Chloe was acting director and she's on leave, and now Russell is acting director. So while we have acting directors, we might not order another hard sign.
Tape and a black pen. Very
well,
good.
Yep. I'd like to introduce Russell Kingdom.
We've met before.
Good. Thanks, Mark.
Good evening. What I was putting forward tonight is a motion that the electors of Fremantle call for an independent investigation to be run by the Auditor General's Office into the King Square business plan to identify the massive cost overruns of the Fremantle Council's King Square project. Due to excessive cost overruns and payments well above budgeted items, which still haven't been properly explained or justified, to identify, report back to the electors how these cost overruns occurred and all the payments were in accordance with good management principles, the Act and Local Government Act and council policy. Also to investigate who approved the millions of extra dollars in additional payments over the budget. When the scope of the investigation is established, which I think is always important if you have an investigation, the scope is properly handled, it is to be done by elected ratepayers, not councillors, that are attending tonight's meeting and have the appropriate skill sets and qualifications to scope out that investigation. So you want me to talk about this or just leave the motion?
So we just need to grab a seconder. There was, okay, Maria Vusic. Back to you now.
Okay, so I'm not after the investigation for a witch hunt. What I want to do is see council putting back in policies that stop these things from happening. I mean, the list that Craig brought up before, that's scary. If I had anything like that in any private business I've run, you wouldn't have anyone left working there. Everyone would be walked out the door. So it's really important that we see transparency, accountability, the fact that yes, we have to change some policies, but we need protections put in place. I mean, I've never done a project, and I've had some big projects where I could sign millions of dollars over an account without going back and getting at least a nod from the CEO or CFO. So I just find it incredible that that much money can move from city accounts into private companies and no one's actually come forward, justified it, explained it, put it forward, and the council hasn't voted on it. Obviously, you've spent the money, you've got to pay someone, but it needs to be done transparently. And I don't think, with the long list of questions we've seen on this over the years, that transparency is a word that we used in this project ever.
Thanks, Mark. Are there any other speakers on this item? Maria Vusic.
How could I give up this opportunity? Look, once again, I agree with Mark Woodcock. This is not about a witch hunt. This is about continuous improvement, and we do have continuous improvement that is absolutely necessary in our finances. I've got to say, in the previous motion, when we looked at the recycling centre, I have found a new spot for a couple of hours every weekend is down at the recycling centre. But I also look at it, and I know that's very labour intensive and that we need to have a look at how we financially manage that. So finances are absolutely critical. The one item amongst many, but one particularly that I'm still getting my head around is the $5 million paid to Kerry Hill, the architect. Now, for some people who are not into figures, I always put it from a practical perspective. $5 million, the opportunity cost of not accounting for that is the South Beach toilets. You can tick that off, you can build it. You can put a new roof onto the new leisure centre. You can probably pay for your Hilton underground power and still have some money left over. Now, when I do opportunity costs like that and I get zero explanation from council, that is what I find disconcerting. This building is here to stay. I'm very happy to move it forward, but we need to be accountable for the way we spend our money. Thank you.
Other speakers on the item? Yep, Craig Ross.
It's been really disappointing how the council has not been transparent for the costs related to the Civic Centre project. Repeatedly questions were asked, what is the total cost for the project? And unfortunately, there seemed to be a council initiative to only state the very narrow building construction costs. And it's unexplainable why that would be the case. Why wouldn't the total project costs be given to both the council and to ratepayers? It just doesn't make any sense. If that had been the case, it would have been clear there were overruns. It would have been clear which categories were inappropriate, which categories needed extra discussion or a budget. But as it said, it's not a witch hunt. It's actually learning from this experience, because it's really, I find it really disappointing as with someone with a finance background. Simple questions from mine were misunderstood on purpose. At the previous electors meeting, I asked probably 3 or 4 times for the total project cost. Did I get a proper answer? No. Did Did I get a transparent answer? No. So I fully support the motion that we have a proper accountability exercise done for the council and the council officers. Thank you.
Further speakers on the item? Yep.
I'm an architect and I was working for like 25 years on council buildings all over Perth and basically all WA. And we got here like with the cost, which is frequently mentioned here for the architect, we've got over 12% of construction costs or project cost rather for the architect's fees, which is very high. It's not, we never worked on this size of project over 10%. So this is very high, and I don't know what if any explanation was ever sort of asked for this high cost. Have you, as a mayor or council at the time, have you asked about this cost yourself? Yes. So what answer did you get?
That was a finding in the audit report. We asked for a full, and it's in the council papers for the month of August, I think. I'm going to look over to the officers because maybe I'm not remembering dates. Councillor Kamada brought a motion to ask for a full wash-up of the Civic Centre costs, and that included those items. I think there's an acknowledgement that the Auditor General is right there, and if we had our time again, we would have structured that contract with the architects differently. Was the right governance in place over the years? The Auditor General says no. So with that particular architect's contract, so all we can do is take that lesson learned and apply it going forward in how we structure our contracts, which is something, of course, we've already done. So it's historical, and we've asked the question, of course.
Okay, another question. Walking by the building, it's I don't know how it's been open for like 3/4 of a year, roughly. There is quite substantial rusting around the building. So I assume the builder will be, if they're a builder, who will be responsible for 12 months, defect liability period, is the builder who will come as part of the construction cost fixed or the rusting or other issues which are obviously on the building?
I'll throw that one to the Director of Infrastructure.
Yeah, thank you, Peter. The building is still in the 12 months defects liability period. The facilities team and the architects have a log of defects and snags, and they'll be rectifying.
Okay. So what is now, okay, in Christmas will end the defect liability period. What is there any budget for attending these sort of issues? Because we are 400 meters from the shore, and it is very corrosive area with the building or with the design of the building, with that expanded mesh all over the building, which I doubt would be from stainless steel or would be from aluminium. How is this going to be maintained? It would be like from our taxpayers' money, basically every year shoving money for painting, derusting, whatever is needed to be done. What is the plan with that?
I'm not sure that. Do you want to take that one now? Or
thank you. We have funding available to deal with any defects as they come up or design issues, which we'll deal with at the end of the 12-month defects liability period. Going forward, we'll have maintenance budgets to maintain the building.
So what would be approximately budget for, like annual budget for the maintenance?
I'm going to suggest that if there's a series of questions, we might put them on notice, particularly if it goes to what might we budget in the future years for maintenance of the building. So every council meeting, you're welcome to come and submit questions on notice. So if you have a series of questions like that, it would be good if you could do it that way, so we can give them a detailed answer. Thanks.
Yeah, because if I remember it rightly, in the original, probably the only business plan for the project, it was assumed that over the years,
maybe wrong, probably I'm wrong, but over 20 years, the building will increase or double in value, basically some, like, you know, incredible size, double in value. So, you know, with that, the issues, and I would dare to say the wrong design of the facade, which is extremely demanding for maintenance, how, you know, these things, how they sort of work together, like increase in value of the building and extreme maintenance costs. That's probably, you know, would be nice as a ratepayer if we get some answer, you know, pretty soon. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Speakers? Otherwise, I am going to go to Mr. Woodcock to close.
All right, thanks very much. But I think what Peter's just raised is a really important issue, is what are we going to be spending over the next 2 years, 5 years, 10 years to maintain a building that was going to double in value according to the business plan. So I think if we get a proper independent investigation into this, it's going to cover parts of the business plan, and that will hopefully give guidance to the city how business plans are structured in the future. It was amazing that a business plan from before 2012, released 2012, went so far before it was initiated, and then everyone thought it would be honky-dory. And here we are now. So there's also what Peter's brought up for architecture, there's accountancy systems. So that investigation is not just saying where did the money go, it's how we are going to ensure that a travesty like this doesn't happen again. Because I don't know how anyone thinks that almost a 40, 50% increase in budget is a good outcome. That's not a good outcome for the ratepayers, and that's a lot of things we could have given to Fremantle. As mentioned, toilet, showers, what John wants to do with the art centre, and I draw people back to, again, Fremantle's unique character. This is what we're supposed to be taking care of, and when we're pouring money into the gratings, so I worked in shipping and cruise industry for a long time, that stuff you put on the outside of the building, that's what they're using gantries and engine rooms. So it's not a good look for the outside to start with, but the repair costs in the future, how much is this going to be, and how much will this drain from the community's other assets, parks, beaches, toilets, facilities, programs for kids. We need to draw this to a close, and that will never happen until the city says, yes, we need to get to the bottom of it, because we've been asking, I've been asking questions on this since 2015. I still don't think I've had an answer that's actually supported a year later. So I would really encourage everyone to say, hey, let's vote for transparency, let's vote for accountability, and let's make sure that our city's future projects are protected from a disaster like this again.
Thank you, Mark. So I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour of the motion? And those against? So the motion is carried. And that brings us to the final motion, of which I have notice, which is from John Dowson. So John, did you want to come up and move your motion?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This motion sort of dovetails a bit into what...
Sorry, one of us will read it out first, I think, and get a seconder, if that's okay, and then we'll move into the debate.
So maybe the last paragraph is really the motion. The other is preliminary, so it's up to you if you want to read the whole thing.
I'll read it out if you like. The Fremantle Society, so this is the second paragraph, the Fremantle Society calls on the Council to urgently hold a public meeting in the Town Hall on the various issues around the bridges and the new issue of Canning Highway deviation, destroying the heritage and landscape values of the escarpment above the river east of the traffic bridge. You're moving that?
Thank you.
And we'll grab a seconder for that. Gina, I think, had her hand up first. And back to you to open debate.
Thank you. Look, I think this dovetails into what Ian is trying to do. What I'm trying to do tonight is to actually put the focus back on getting the council to actually do some of the heavy lifting for us. The community has been doing a lot of work. And I might just say the Fremantle Society has spent thousands of dollars. We made a film which took 200 hours. It's on YouTube called Tall Timber, Save Freo Bridge. And as I said before, I never want to make another film again, 200 hours to do 5-minute film. But we have done a lot of work. We really want to see the council step up on this issue. Exactly 2 years ago, 3rd of October 2020, the Herald published an article, Leadership Needed, where we called for the council to step up and show some leadership against Main Roads, who we know are total bullies. We know they have delivered an appalling project on the corner of High Street and Stirling Highway, and we know what they're like. But it needs the council to really step up and take these sort of guys on. I just might remind you that years ago, when we were faced with the ING issue, the ING project, council didn't just sit back and cop that on the chin from the state government when big boxes were going to be built on the wharf competing with the CBD. Council really ramped up their action. They actually printed 10,000 public submission forms and delivered them to the community. 10,000 printed and delivered, which resulted in 776 submissions, which was quite extraordinary. Council spent $50,000 on 3D technology so that council could show the impact of these buildings on Victoria Quay by using the latest technology to show the impact. Council also hired a very expensive consultant who wrote reports for us. So the point is, on that issue, council really got out there and fought for the community. And what I see from in this issue, I just don't see council actually doing anything. I think council should be advocating for what the community wants and not what the state government wants. Even Mandurah, which sat back and got their bridge taken away from them, even their council put up $35,000 just for the community to do some history and things, little projects and things. I mean, I just want to see this council actually step up, because you can see from what the community wants that it's a big pot of money, $280 million. We want that money spent, but we want an outcome that actually solves some problems and isn't just a rush to build some ugly concrete thing that wipes out a level 1A heritage bridge and wipes out an escarpment in the same process. So we really need council to, I think, represent community views, and a public meeting in the town hall. What Ian is proposing is an electors meeting, and that's fine, but the electors have got to organise it, the electors have got to sort of fund it. I really would like to see council step up and do some work on this. I mean, the final comment I'll make is that there is no resolution to the traffic problems of North Fremantle. Council spent no money sort of advocating for our Greenbelt idea, which is like a Highline New York style. That's got enormous support from a lot of people, but we're not getting any help or support from the council. So it even features in your own document, Transformation 2029. It says, build a High Line across the river where the traffic bridge is currently. So please support this motion, because I think council should show the leadership by at least holding, funding and running and advocating for what the community wants by having a town hall meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Speakers on this motion? No speakers on this motion, so we will put that to a vote. All those in... Sorry? Do you want to... He didn't have that look on his face, but yes, thank you. Okay, I'll put that one to the vote. All those in favour? And that's carried. Thank you. All right, so if there are no motions from the floor, they all appear to be dealt with. Then it looks like we have come to the close of the meeting. I'm going to check the time on something more accurate than this thing. At 7:22, we'll declare the meeting closed. Thank you for attending tonight.